Hey friend, are you confused by all of the different talk that you hear about the different low carb diets that are available? Over the last several decades, low carb diets have really become more and more popular. We've seen lots of them come and go. People are constantly looking to lower their calorie intake and increase their intake of protein, vegetables, and healthy fats. But there's so many different low carb diets that are out there. How do you know which one is right for you? They're definitely not all the same. And in today's episode of Tuesday Tea with Mandy B, I'm going to discuss some of the most popular contenders. We're going to look at 3 of the most popular low carb diets that are out there, as well as which one may be best for you. So hi everybody, happy Tuesday. It's Tuesday Tea with Mandy B. I brought my favorite it's one of my new mugs. Do you know this show? Do you know what this hot brown water comes from? I want to know. Let me know in the comments if you recognize where this comes from. I'm obsessed with this show. And today I'm drinking some raspberry fruit tea. So I want to know, do you know my show? I'll reveal it in a little bit if you don't know already. But I want to know who's in the know out there about hot brown water. So let's talk a little bit about low carb diets. This is one of the most popular questions that I get when people find out that I'm diabetic. They want to, first of all, they say, oh, well, you can't even eat sugar. Or I'll be eating dessert somewhere and someone will say, oh, I don't think you're supposed to eat that. Aren't you diabetic? Like I get a lot of comments like that. And people always assume that all diabetics go on one of these low carb diets. They are really popular because carbs are one way that we can control our blood glucose, but it's not the only way that we can control blood glucose. But I wanted to talk today about some of these different low carb diets that are out there. So what is a low carb diet? What do we mean by that? A low carb diet is just one where you're trying to improve your health, maybe lose a little weight by lowering your intake of carbohydrates from unhealthy processed foods and replacing that with an intake of protein or fat-rich foods. A low-carb diet sometimes focuses on high fat, sometimes it's high protein, and so there's lots of different examples out there of different low-carb diets. And so I thought we would talk today about 3 of the most popular low-carb diets and how they work. So you probably have heard of all of these. Maybe you didn't know all the intricacies between how they differ, but let's start with kind of the grandfather of the low carb diet movement, which is the Atkins diet. So this was developed in 1972 by Dr. Atkins. It's long been one of the most popular low carb diets. The Atkins diet actually has 2 different methods. One is called Atkins 20 and one is called Atkins 40. But it's a little confusing when you think about the way that these are named because the Atkins 20 is for anyone who's trying to lose more than 40 pounds. And the more moderate Atkins 40 method is for those looking to lose less than 40 pounds. So it differs in the amount of carbs that you are allowed to eat during the Atkins diet. And so the Atkins diet actually is split into 4 phases. And each phase that you work your way through, you're allowed to slightly increase the amount of carbs that you take in each day. So you start out in the most restrictive phase, phase 1, and you since it's so restrictive, I do want to just say you do need to find a way to replace some key vitamins and minerals and nutrients since you are so low on the carbohydrate intake there. So in phase 1, typically you're looking at about 20 to 25 grams of carbs, and you're getting most of those via protein or seeds, cheese, nuts, or greens. So we do have carbs in things like fruits and vegetables, and most of your 20 to 25 grams in that first phase is going to come from those. You're not adding in any extra carbs from anything processed or anything from flour. In phase 2, you can build up your net carb. My pen is rolling off the page there. You can build up your net carb intake to anywhere between 20 to 50 grams. In this phase, you can add in low sugar fruits, legumes, and some more vegetables that are a little more carb or starch heavy. In the third phase, this is when you get to about 10 pounds away from your goal weight. You can actually build up your carb consumption to anywhere between 50 to 80 grams. And then in phase 4, that's the maintenance phase, and you're slowly increasing your carb consumption by 5-gram increments until you kind of get to a place where you're able to maintain and you're not losing any more than your goal weight. So that's kind of the Atkins diet, the way it's set up and the way it works. So you kind of work your way through those phases. The next low carb diet that has been really popular lately is the ketogenic diet. So this is one of the most popular ones that you see and hear a lot about today, but it's not new. It actually was originally developed in the 1920s to help children with epilepsy. So from there, it actually has shown from those beginning studies where it was actually developed, it's shown many positive benefits for people who were looking to lose weight, and it's become widely popular as a result of that weight loss effect. So the aim of the keto diet is to swap burning ketones instead of glucose for fuel. So you want to be in that fat burning stage when you're in ketosis is what it's called. And so in order to achieve ketosis, 70 to 80% of your diet comes from fat, 20 to 25% from protein, and only 5% from carbs. So we're swapping the way that our body is burning fuel. So typically the first fuel that we're going to burn is glucose. And we can ingest glucose. Our bodies can also make glucose through a couple of different, like we can actually turn protein into glucose. Our liver can create glucose. But we want to keep that to a minimum so that we're burning fat instead of carbs, instead of glucose for fuel. So that's a pretty restrictive diet as far as carbs go. Most of your calories are going to come from fats and proteins. And so that's where you see a lot of keto places where you see something that's keto friendly, right? It's going to be very low in carbs. It's going to be higher in fat and higher in protein. And so ketosis is the goal, is getting your body to turn that switch and to turn on fat burning. But it's a very restrictive diet, and you can get out of ketosis very easily. So as a diabetic, one of the things that we watch is ketoacidosis. And so you can actually harm your body if you're not really paying attention there. And so we have to be careful with ketosis. Ketones are good. Ketones mean that we're in fat burning if weight loss is a goal, but we have to be really careful with the keto diet as far as diabetics go. The third low carb diet that I wanted to talk to you about today, let me take a sip of my tea. Has anybody guessed? Do you know the show? I want to see it. Let me see it in the comments. It's Ted Lasso. Are you fans? I love this so much. So this is like Jason Sudeikis' face, and he is not a fan of tea. He moves to England. He's a soccer coach, and he hates tea. And so he calls it hot brown water. In another scene, he calls it pigeon sweat. And it just makes me laugh being someone who loves tea so much. So I had to have this mug when I fell in love with that show. The third low carb diet that I wanted to talk about today is the Paleo Diet. And so you've probably heard of Paleo. Again, today my goal is just to kind of differentiate between these three very popular low carb diets. So the Paleo is another highly popular diet that's been in circulation for several years. It's based on the idea that humans should only consume foods that were accessible to us as, like prehistoric humans. So we're looking at foods like sugar, legumes, grains, and processed food, things that our ancestors couldn't eat. Those are out of the diet. They're not allowed. And so the focus there starts to fall on things like bone broth and seafood and meat and fruit and vegetables. There's no restrictions on the amount of those types of foods that you can consume, but it's looking to see like what our ancestors would have eaten. They wouldn't have been able to grab a bag of chips out of the pantry, right? They would have gone to kill their dinner, eaten on it for days, used all the different parts of the animal, and then also gotten fiber and things from fruits and vegetables that they could find around them. But it actually has been scientifically shown that the paleo diet helps people make improvements in 5 key metabolic components. It can improve your triglycerides, your diastolic blood pressure. That's the bottom number when you do like 120/80. Diastolic is that bottom number. Your waist circumference, your blood sugar, and systolic blood pressure, which is the top number. So if you say like 120/80, 120 is the systolic and 80 is the diastolic. So the paleo diet has been shown scientifically to help make improvements in those areas. I'm of course very interested in the blood sugar aspect of that, but it's a way of kind of hearkening back to the way that our ancestors would have eaten. So paleo doesn't really follow any specific breakdowns as far as percentages of fat, protein, and carb. They don't measure those macronutrients that we kind of think about in some of these other diets where you're really closely tracking, especially like your amount of carbs. And so some people argue that this diet isn't necessarily low carb because you're not tracking the amount of carbohydrates that you eat. However, the paleo diet removes any and all grains from the consumer's diet. And so including, what we think of maybe as healthier grains like quinoa or rice, not to mention other foods like sugar, which definitely our ancestors didn't eat. And so that does typically drastically decrease the carb intake that you're getting when you're on the paleo diet. So the idea behind the paleo is that it's meant to be a lifestyle choice and not a diet, but there's no stages that you follow. You just adjust your habits to meet those paleo requirements, thinking about eating only foods that our ancestors would have been able to eat. So we've looked at the Atkins low-carb diet, the keto low-carb diet, and the paleo low-carb, if you want to call it that, diet. And that word diet, I'm not meaning that it's just to be a diet. Some of these could all be lifestyle changes and things that you're changing that aren't just for a particular amount of time that you're wanting to lose weight. But the question that comes up when we start comparing and looking at these is, well, which one works the best? And here's the bottom line. The best one is the one that works for you, the one that you can stick with, the one that you can sustain. So you've heard about these popular ones from me today. You could, take some of this and try one of those out if you're interested, but pick one that's the most sustainable. If you feel like a staged approach to really cutting back and kind of having a carb detox and then working your way back, adding those carbs back would work for you, maybe the Atkins is a good fit. If you're one who would really like to focus on protein and fat, maybe keto is great for you. If you're one who really wants to kind of get back to our roots and eat more foods that our ancestors would have eaten, paleo may be a great choice for you. So it just comes down to which one you feel like you can stick with and which one doesn't leave you feeling too restricted and then you fall off and you give up after, a week or two or a month just because it's too hard. So I hope this was informative, learning about some of the different low-carb diets that are out there. I have a freebie for you if you are interested in getting 5 blood sugar-friendly recipes. I've put together a little packet of those for you, and you can find that in my bio. You can look wherever this video is being shown, wherever the replay is. You can find that either in the comments or check my bio, and you'll be able to find 5 free blood sugar-friendly recipes for you. Thanks for joining me today.